Mrs. Greer.
Oh, thank you.
We thought you deserved.
Oh, how wonderful. Thank you so much.
Susan will be serving everybody on the
sure.
We thought,
Everyone gets champagne. Do they know why? Do they know why they're getting champagne?
Some of them read my Instagram post or yours, but we will do that. So,
Yes, no?
are you set, Patrick? Okay, so welcome to the Poison Pen. We're very excited to see you. This is Greer.
Yes.
And this is Sarah. And I'm happy to tell you that they are, well, why don't you tell them?
We have some big news, you guys. We just found out a couple hours ago.
Did you sit on your microphone?
Oh, I'm a very professional author.
Yeah. Technology is our biggest challenge, always.
It is.
So starting over.
I guess we say it together. We have some big news. We just found out
That we are number
one on the New
York
York
Times
Times
bestseller
bestseller list
list.
for an anonymous girl.
Your first visit and your first number.
Maybe many
Thank
more.
you. Cheers, everybody. Thank you all.
Cheers, everybody.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Luckily, the rain went away, right? Because I was explaining to them that last night, nobody goes out in the rain in Phoenix, so we were astonished that a few people sloshed into the store. But tonight, happily, was beautiful. Since you haven't been here before, it would be wonderful if you would tell us about The Wife Between Us, because we didn't get a chance to talk to you about it,
Sure.
which is a terrific book.
Yeah, absolutely. So we will tell you a little bit about both books, and then I'm going to read a very short passage from an anonymous girl, and then we're going to talk to you a little bit about our origin story, because in our visits, people tend to people always want to know how we do it, because there aren't that many co-authors. So do you want to do Wife Between Us, and I'll do Anonymous and read?
Yeah, so how many people here have read The Wife Between Us?
Oh,
Almost
thank
all
you.
of
Okay,
you?
great.
Oh my
Okay,
gosh,
but
that's
no spoilers,
amazing.
still no.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because we're so in our heads with an anonymous girl and actually with the next book we're writing
Yeah.
that I have to cast back, and you'll have to correct me if I say anything wrong
Don't
about
give
The
too
Wife
much
Between
away,
Us.
don't
Right,
give too
right. So The Wife Between Us is a story about a woman who has been discarded by her wealthy, perfect husband. He's found a replacement, somebody younger, prettier, more appropriate. And she becomes obsessed with stopping his way to her replacement. Now take everything you think you know and suspend your assumptions, because you're going to read, what you're going to read will surprise you.
Yeah, as any of you can write, all of you have
How
read,
do
you know,
How do I do?
right?
I haven't
Right.
done that elevator pitch in a while.
Right. It's a hard book to pitch because, without giving away, right, the big twist. So an anonymous girl. This is funny because Sarah and I've been, we talk about we do this a lot, and usually actually you do the summary, but I'm going to do the summary today for Anonymous Girl, which. Anonymous Girl is about a young woman, Jessica Ferris, who's in her 20s. She lives in New York City, and she's struggling to make it like a lot of 20-somethings are. So she hears about a psychology study on ethics and morality, and she sneaks into it thinking she's going to make some easy cash. So she goes to NYU. She walks into this empty classroom, and the only thing there is a laptop. She opens it up, and it says, "Welcome, subject 52." And then pretty soon, questions start to creep across the screen. And they seem fairly innocuous at first, but then they begin to get more complicated. And it seems as if the psychiatrist who's conducting the study knows what she's thinking, but also knows what she's hiding. Bum, bum, bum. So,
Done.
thank you.
Yeah, that's usually my part.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, but are you going to go ahead and read the
Yeah, I'll read
page?
too.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Do you want to read?
No, you go
Okay,
ahead.
it's my reading.
I'm going to sip champagne.
Okay, you just relax now and see. So, yeah, we kind of have like a little, like we're so used to sort of doing things a certain way.
I mean, at this
It's
point,
good
we're
to
pretty
mix it
much a
up.
married couple. You know how married couples have their own routines. We're pretty much.
It's true, but I also feel like probably married couples, we know each other so well that you kind of know like how whatever. Anyway, it's a little weird. Okay. In fact, wait, just before I begin, just tell them how weird it is with our
We never plan to
Yeah.
dress alike, yet somehow we always dress alike. It's creepy.
It's really creepy.
It's, yeah.
We've showed up in gray and black sweaters, which, I mean, tonight I own one short sleeve turtleneck.
So do I.
It's this. I mean,
We didn't tell
we
each
didn't
other,
talk
what
about
are you
this.
bringing? We showed up and we met each other in
Yeah.
the elevator and we were like, oh, you're
Oh.
wearing a short sleeve dark turtleneck. Interesting.
So, yeah.
When you get a chance, would you mention these because we're
Oh, we
giving
will.
them away?
Oh, we will.
Yes.
Okay, yes. Okay. I'm gonna read. Then we'll do beauty blenders. We've got lots to cover here. Okay. You're invited. Seeking women aged 18 to 32 to participate in a study on ethics and morality conducted by a preeminent New York City psychiatrist. Generous compensation, anonymity guaranteed. Call for more details. It's easy to judge other people's choices. The mother with a grocery cart full of Fruit Loops and double stuffed Oreos who yells at her child. The driver of an expensive convertible who cuts off a slower vehicle. The woman in the quiet coffee shop who yaks on her cell phone. The husband who cheats on his wife. But what if you knew the mother had lost her job that day? What if the driver had promised his son he'd make it to his school play, but his boss had insisted he attend a last-minute meeting? What if the woman in the coffee shop had just received a phone call from the love of her life, a man who'd broken her heart? And what if the cheater's wife habitually turned her back on his touch? Perhaps you would also make a snap judgment about a woman who decides to reveal her innermost secrets to a stranger for money. But suspend your assumptions, at least for now. We all have reasons for our actions, even if we hide the reasons from those who think they know us best. Even if the reasons are so deeply buried, we can't recognize them ourselves. Are you intrigued?
Yes.
Yes, I got a little giggle. So, yeah.
So that's the beginning of an anonymous girl, but Greer and I thought we would actually like to start tonight by telling you about our beginning. And we met about 10 years ago. I actually can date it pretty precisely because I was pregnant with my youngest son. And Greer was an editor in New York, and I knew of her before she knew anything about me because I knew her reputation. She edited some of my favorite authors. And so while I was at home raising my kids and stealing away an hour or two here or there to try to start a novel, I was writing literally at Chuck E. Cheese. Because I have 3 boys, so what else am I going to do? I mean, they never slept. They, were not the kind of kids that would sit quietly and play with blocks. They were little tickers. So I had a system where I would take them all to Chuck E. Cheese, and I would bring my laptop, and I would get tokens. And I would sit in a place where I could see everything. And I would say, you have to come up to me every time you want a token. And I'd have a laptop, and I'd type a line, I'd look up, got a visual on that kid, token, type a line, that kid's okay. And so I crafted a debut novel. When it came time for my agent to send it out, I said, I really want to work with this Greer Hendricks. Whatever you do, make sure you send it to her. Meanwhile, Greer was...
Yeah, so I was at a point in my career where I was really, I'd say, looking for marriage, not a one-night stand. So if I liked a book, which I did, I fell in love with Sarah's debut, I wanted to meet the author and see if there was, if there was a certain chemistry. I was not alone. A lot of other editors in New York City were also interested in Sarah's debut. So her agent took her around to meet with editors. And when we met, we immediately hit it off. And I persevered. I acquired her debut. And we worked together for 7 of your books, so 7 solo books. And over our time working together, we discovered we had a number of uncanny similarities. That was even before our wardrobe, our wardrobe situation. So we both had played field hockey in high school. We both studied psychology and journalism. We were both the exact same age. That's when you usually say.
29.
That we both are terrible cooks. We both have brothers that we're really close to who are both named Robert. I mean, it's really weird, right? So we...
Basically the same person.
Yeah. So we became really close, and then I decided to leave corporate publishing. And I had some editorial and consulting work lined up, but in the back of my mind, I wanted to write. But I wasn't really telling anybody because it's kind of like you're really vulnerable if you put yourself out there and say you're trying to do something. And I'm the kind of person who, if I can't do it, it just would have been embarrassing. But Sarah and I stayed really close, and so I confessed the secret to her, and she said,
Let's write a book together. One of the rare differences between us is that I am very impulsive and very intuitive, and it was just more a gut feeling. You know, I knew I didn't want to lose Greer because as an editor, you know, we worked together closely, but also as a good friend. She was somebody who was very important in my life, and I felt like she's leaving and I'm not going to work with her, and I don't want to lose that, you know, this wonderful relationship we have. But I think also on another level, I just felt like we could do something really special together. And so it was just kind of an impulsive thing. Let's write a book together. But then Greer said,
let me think about it. Because I think I had this kind of idea that I should try to do this on my own. So I thought about it, and then I realized that's crazy. I've written a couple of articles. I mean, I've edited hundreds of books, but I have never written a book. I have no idea how to write a book. This could be like a master class in learning how to write. And so I thought about it, and then I emailed you at, it was like 5
a.m.
Yeah, 5 a.m. the next morning. I was like, let's do it. But I set up some parameters, and the first one was if this isn't good for you, if this isn't working, you can back out at any time. Like I basically had to sign a prenup.
And I said the same thing, Greer. If it's not working for you, if it's not what you want, of course. You know,
no hard feelings.
No,
no
just punch you down.
Right?
No hard feelings.
No hard feelings. So we decided that we're going to write together, and then the question was, well, what are we going to write? So Sarah lives in DC. Sarah lives in DC, and I live in Manhattan. We each went to our bookshelves, and we pulled down our favorite books from over the past few years, and we looked them over, and we realized there were certain themes. So they were like strong female protagonists and psychological
thrillers. Yeah, we loved. I mean, we were pulling down things like Before I Go to Sleep by S.J. Watson. You know, of course, Gone Girl, Girl on the Train, but things that you know, just really strong books with strong female characters stayed with us, and of course, we had a lot of overlap.
Yeah, we had a lot of overlap. So we were like, okay, we're gonna write a psychological thriller. Even though Sarah had primarily, I mean, she'd written women's fiction, and that's primarily, I'd edited women's fiction. And then you came to New York for that crazy 24-hour stint.
Yes. So we decided we're going to sit down and write together.
Yeah.
So we're like, well, you know, the first thing we need to do is get together and write. So I took a train up to New York, and I had a hotel, and Greer came, and we were being very secretive about it. Because we didn't want, you know, if we failed, we didn't really want anybody to know what we were up to. So we sat there side by side with our little matching laptops, and we were kind of manic. We're like, you know what we're doing. Like, you've edited a million books. I've written a bunch of books. Let's pound this thing out. So over the course of 24 hours, we wrote about 20 pages. We thought they were brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
We were like, publishing, step back.
Look out, here we come.
And then we sent them to our agent. And she was like, oh, dear God. These are horrible. Because we kind of, in our excitement, like, I mean, it doesn't matter how, you know, seasoned you are, like, you don't have perspective on what you're writing when you're in the thick of it. And so those early pages did turn into The Wife Between Us, but they're quite different than The Wife Between Us as it is now.
Yeah, I mean, for any of you who read it, like, those terrible pages started off with, it's set in Chicago. Why we set it in Chicago when neither of us lived there? I have no idea.
No idea.
And it opened with a horse-drawn carriage, and Richard looked really different. Anyway, it was very different, which is, we say, for anyone who's trying to write, or if any of you have children who are trying to write, or like revise, edit. I mean, even like Sarah said, we're seasoned, but they were really bad. Then the question.
So then we had 20 bad pages, and we had no idea how we were supposed to write together when we lived in different cities. So the collaboration was not off to a promising start. But we
I've actually never quite heard you say it quite that way. Yeah, but we had like that kind of exuberance. I don't know any of you have ever like fallen in love. So we were just so like manically excited by this idea that we just persevered. So then my daughter, who was then 13, set us up on Google Docs and Google Hangouts, which okay, you probably are all like, duh, like that's a great idea. But at the time, we actually didn't know it. We didn't know.
We were like, Google what?
Yeah, what is this?
Hold on, I can see Greer's cursor. Yeah, and Google Docs is
for anyone who doesn't
this
know.
amazing thing where you can be in different cities with people and you can be sharing the same computer screen. So as I'm typing a line, Greer can be typing a line. She can be crossing out something I write in suggestive mode, putting something over it. I can be doing the same to hers. So we began to write that way, but we also had a Google Hangout phone call. So we are on the phone talking and writing together. And we write every single line together. Where most co-authors will trade a chapter, trade a character back and forth, edit each other. We don't do that. We are in on the ground floor, every idea, every line together.
So I think some people are like, well, how in the world does that work? But the other thing that we do before we really start to even write is we brainstorm for months before we come up with our ideas, and even before each writing session. So we talk and talk and talk, and our two favorite words are what if. So what if this, what if that? So even before we write a chapter, we often have lots of notes, the elements, the pieces of that chapter written in that Google Doc, so that it's almost like a blueprint for how that chapter is going to work. And then the other thing we do is we used to go to each other's cities, at like kind of every other month, but now we meet in Philadelphia, which is about halfway between us. And
although we kind of want to meet here because we're staying at the Valley Ho Hotel. We love it. We just got in a couple hours ago, and we're like, back at home, there is snow and slush and gray, and our children want to be fed. They're so demanding, and like
our dogs, your dog's chewing stuff, mine's peeing everywhere.
My kids texted me a photo. The dog's chewing a pillow. But here it's like sunny and beautiful, and you know it's lovely. So yeah, we're shamelessly asking you all to have us back.
But before we come back here, what we have been doing is going to each other's cities, and we so when we went to each other's cities, or now when we meet, one of us is responsible for bringing like these giant post-it notes, and this is another one of our differences. So Sarah, when we're like we use them to plot out our novels. But Sarah, how many of you have seen Homeland? Carrie Matheson. Kind of crazy. Okay, that's her.
She's creative.
She's great. She's like the post-its are everywhere. There's like weird, like the lines you can barely read them. It's like
I'm like I see patterns. Hold on. And Greer is chasing me around. Like straighten the edges. Can I get this one down? I can't think.
I can't concentrate. But usually the system works, except for one time.
Oh yeah. Okay, so we were plotting out an anonymous girl, and you guys know we write psychological thrillers, so they're not like sweet peaches and cream books all the time. And so we were plotting out, I think it was Act 2, and we had things on post-it notes like gun or knife, and we would stick them to the wall just so we could get a big visual arc of our book. And it was my job to take down the post-it notes, and I did photograph them all so we'd have a record of our work, but things got busy and Greer was rushing to check out, and we were talking.
There's never enough time when we're together.
Distracted, and somehow I left them all up.
That must have been interesting.
In DC, right near Union Station, a poor hotel maid walked in and was like, oh my god, and it was under Greer's name in the hotel. She checked in with her credit card. So the next time I'm like, are you going to be allowed back in the city?
Yeah, we were a little worried I wouldn't be allowed back in DC.
But you have been.
I have been, but now we are meeting in Philly, so there's another city that we can...
Now we have to carve out 48 hours every month. We meet in Philly and we write nonstop. We have it down to a science where we show up in exercise clothes and we sit in different areas. We have a few favorite spots in the hotel, and we just sit
which
and
we
work.
break into.
Right, we did break into a conference room. We got in a little trouble. You get in trouble, and you got like an arrest record.
Only with you, Missy. Yeah.
But yeah, that's part of our process. So it's kind of a blend, and we're doing a bit of writing now while we're on tour. We actually wrote on the plane on the way in for a little while.
We did. We were supposed to write this afternoon, but then we were too excited by the news about the bestseller.
I know. That was so distracting. But okay, so for an anonymous girl, you know, a lot of people do ask us about our ideas, and we would love to say we're like J.K. Rowling, and we, you know, sit on a subway and go, oh, I just got an idea, and I'm gonna scribble it on my hand, and it's gonna be a 7-book brilliant series. But we don't really work that way. We do the what if for months, every day. What if this character did this? What if we threw in this setting? What if, you know, have you read this crazy psychology study? What if we worked in a piece of this? And then at the end of every day, we kick out 99 ideas and we keep one, and we keep doing the same thing the next day. So we can't really say how our ideas form because it is such a slow boil, but we can always point to like 3 things in an anonymous girl that we recognize helped inform the plot.
Yeah. So, have any of you read Anonymous Girl yet?
Oh, you already read it just about a week ago.
Well, I'm an advanced reviewer, so I read
well,
them.
thank you. I mean, I think we're thanking you.
No, but you did thank me on Instagram, so.
You
good.
did?
Oh,
Okay.
So, yeah.
And did you say you read it?
I need 30 pages. I'm like dying to.
Oh, gosh!
Thank you. Oh
Oh
my
my
gosh.
God. Okay.
So you guys bought the book?
Book of the month.
Book of the
And
month.
then I
Oh.
bought this after.
Oh, yay!
She might have tipped us onto #1 on the New York Times. We're mentioning that whenever possible because it's so excited. Oh my gosh.
Back to the very serious. Okay, so for this book, there were our kind of the first idea that sort of excited us was we wanted there to be a real immediacy to the storytelling. So sections of the book are written in the second person, and as I described, our main character Jessica gets roped into this ethics and morality study. So there are questions throughout the book. You know, have you ever deliberately hurt someone you love? Should a punishment always fit the crime? So these are questions we hope that you as the reader will be drawn into answering, that you'll feel sort of compelled to answer along with Jessica. So that was number 1, this real immediacy to the storytelling. Number 2 was the relationship between psychologists or psychiatrists and their clients, because it is such a fascinating relationship. Like anyone's relationship with a therapist, like you're wondering, like what are they like outside of this office? You know, who's their husband? What are their kid? All that, and like you kind of wonder, are they wondering about you as well, or their clients? So that was really a fascinating idea to us. And the third element is something for those of you who have read, you might say, like it's really not a very big piece of the story, but we had read a New York Times article about a woman whose boss accuses her of stealing, and then he brings her into his office and has her stripped down because he's convinced that she has the item on her, and then he rapes her. And after that, he walks her to her car and says, "Get home safely." And the juxtaposition of this horrible, violent act with this, then this get home safely, this attempt to be like nurturing and caring, it sent chills through us, and it was just like this little, I don't know, like piece of a puzzle that when we were brainstorming about the story we wanted to tell, that kind of informed a piece of it.
Yeah, and that was before all the Me Too stories started coming out, so that was sort of interesting. We felt like we kept seeing this more and more.
Yeah. So, what else?
What else do we want to talk about? Let's see. I mean, I feel like we should open it up to Q&A. We can talk forever, as you can probably tell. But if you guys have questions, that's what we would most like to
Here,
answer.
talk about this.
Oh, Beauty Buzz.
Here, Beauty
Yeah.
Buzz.
Oh, this is our marketing team and our publishing team. They're brilliant.
They're brilliant.
So our main character in An Anonymous Girl, as Greer said in the beginning, is a young woman named Jessica. She's living in New York, and her job is a makeup artist. And she's kind of like Glam Squad. Do you guys have that here? It's, you can call and have a makeup artist show up at your home or wherever you are. Like say you're getting married and you want to have your makeup professionally done. You can have the makeup artist show up at your hotel room or the church. And so our main character does this in New York. And she, will work on, brides or people who are getting a corporate headshot, whatever it is. But she goes around every day and, has different clients. And so our brilliant marketing team created a business card for her.
Her company is called Beauty Buzz,
which we made up, and a little makeup blender, which apparently the head of one of the heads of marketing is a man, and they had a lot of fun, showing him this and trying to explain to him how it actually worked. But these are being
Going to
given
show
out.
us how it actually works?
So apparently you dampen it,
Okay.
and then you put on a little bit of liquid foundation, and then it kind of smooths all over your skin. And you can, if you have like a smear of mascara, you can wipe it away. It's kind of a wonder tool. And there's a whole bunch of them in the front, so everybody should grab one.
So that's why it's called a blender? I mean, I was
Yeah.
envisioning something you could make daiquiris with. When you
We
No.
like the way you think.
Yeah, we do. Maybe our next book will have a different kind of blender.
It is fun. It was a marketing thing, and they were very kind and sent us a batch so that if you buy the book, or all the people that did, they can each get one. I would like to ask you, because this is a topic, I just did my first ever sales presentation, because Poison Pen Press has just been acquired by Source Books, so I had to go and be you. And in talking about crime fiction, nobody can really define what a psychological suspense or domestic thriller or trust no one, whatever. People all have different takes on it. So what is it that you think that it is that might help us understand better why you're so fascinated with it?
Okay, so for us it's a little bit tricky because Greer had edited primarily women's fiction, and I had written women's fiction. So when we decided to write a psychological thriller, we actually didn't know what the rules were for the genre. In every genre there are these kind of rules that are
Well,
unspoken.
they're conventions, and rules, convention's probably a nicer word than
Conventions,
rule, because
yes.
it's a little more flexible.
Sure.
But still.
Yeah, so we didn't really know, and we haven't deliberately we haven't studied what things generally make successful psychological thrillers, because we kind of want to keep that freshness. So
I feel like we kind of there are these conventions, we didn't know what they were, and therefore maybe we broke a few of those conventions if they're just because we weren't sort of following those patterns. But your question is an interesting one. I guess if I had to answer, psychological thriller, I would say that at least what we do is we really dig into the psychology of our characters. Like, it's really important to us that that you as a reader, kind of understand where they're coming from. You might not like what they do, but that you understand why they're making their wacky decisions, and that there's a propulsion to the plot. Obviously they're page turners, short chapters. They end on each each chapter kind of ends on hopefully kind of a cliffhanger that you want to be turning the pages. I think that maybe is the suspense or the thriller aspect to it. Sort of helpful.
Well, when I was forced to do this,
Yeah. What did you
I-
say?
well,
it gives an answer.
that's
Yeah.
all right. So in a conventional mystery, you guys can't see me. In a conventional mystery, it's basically shaped like this. It's a closed circle of suspects. There can only be X number of people who could actually have committed the crime. I just was writing the January, the rest of the book news too, and I was trying to describe the book I picked for our British Crime Club. And one of the reasons is that there were, let me put it this way, 7 teenagers go into the woods, and only 6 come back, which is kind of French or whatever. 30 years later, the missing teenagers' bones are discovered in such a way that only the surviving 6, only one of them could have, or possibly paired, could have done the crime. So it's a super closed circle of suspects.
That's an interesting premise.
And the process by which
What
you
if?
solve a book like that,
What if?
it's detection, it's deduction or induction or something. Thrillers, you open it up and, basically a thriller as a protagonist and an antagonist, and the central question isn't who did it and why, the central question is who's going to win. And then you can have capers, which is my own personal favorite, like The Sting, when you have all these little pieces that have to fit together, and the central question is who will get away with what. And then we come to this, and the best way we finally ended up describing it is you wind up with layers. The process is more revelation than anything else. And the central question is who will survive or who will stay safe? Do you think that is a reasonable? I was at a marketing meeting, so they want to know how to talk about books, and that's why this whole thing came up. But I was thinking about that afterward. What is the emotion that you, the reader, have when you're reading one of these books? And maybe the question is, who will survive, right? who will stay safe. And was that in The Wife Between Us, if you think about it?
Oh,
That was the
absolutely.
really
Yeah.
the
For
central
both of
driver,
them,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
both books.
So
Yeah.
I'm not, you
And
know,
maybe the crimes aren't immediately apparent as they were with the murder or the closed circle.
well, that's why I
Yeah.
say it's
Yeah.
revelation. It's kind
Yeah.
of layers of things, and you
Yeah.
know,
And
so
it's more of a chess game, right?
Yeah.
It's more of like the psychological rather than maybe the physical.
well, it's not Poirot or Sherlock Holmes, you know,
Yeah.
that arrives at the country house and you know applies his little gray cells and all that other crap, you know. And basically, you often have multiple narrators too, or multiple points of view, so you can kind of see out the story. It's just you know, there's such an enormous number of books that are you know, ever since Gone Girl, a book I'm famously or infamously known to have told Jillian that she shouldn't really bother to come because I didn't think anybody would buy her book. I didn't put it quite that way, but that's kind of how it came out.
Oh, we've
Because
all had those
we
moments.
had done really well with sharp objects, so we'd had a hard time, and I knew that they were putting so much effort into the book. I felt guilty taking it for a stop, you know. And then she said no. She really wanted to come, and in the end, we said people flying all over Phoenix looking for copies, you know. Costco.
That's so funny.
No, it really was.
hilarious.
But that was kind of the book that had,
Yeah.
you know, the impact. And I think ever since people are trying to grasp what it is about those books that really propelled them. And you know, I think it's so great that you guys got to #1 with your book, you know, and The Wife Between Us was a bestseller too.
It still is,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, it's almost impossible to get.
Is
At the moment, yeah, there was a big print glitch show. That's why we don't have any guys. Sorry, it wasn't that we fell asleep. It's just sort of merging back into production again. There was a horrible paper shortage or something over Christmas, and a whole bunch of books didn't get reprinted. But anyway, you know, trying to figure out what books that you guys might like for our book clubs and all. I try to figure out, you know, what books are and what would appeal to you. And so now that, you know, is that what fascinates you, is this process of revelation and keeping people safe?
Well, I think we're both curious. We're both curious. We both studied psychology, so I think and we're both really interested in relationships and the nuances in relationships. And then,
So that's a good point. They're more relationship driven.
I mean, whether it's between, you know, a husband and a wife,
Right.
or a psychiatrist and her client, or, you know, in our new book,
We can't
talk
say too
about,
much.
yeah, friendships, marriages. That's, I think, I mean, before we even start writing, and you know, we write basically from 9 to 4 together every day, like when Sarah's youngest goes off to school and our kids come home. But oftentimes, before we even start writing, before the what if even starts, we download on our own lives, because so much of what we're going through informs what's happening on the page. So if one of us is having a hard time with something or other, we have to kind of talk about it in order to kind of clear it or process it, because it's going to come out one way or another.
So we're kind of each other's therapists.
I would say so, actually. Interesting.
I never thought that before, but we are.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions?
Dr. Shields.
Uh-huh.
I love how you guys wrote Dr.
Oh,
Shields.
careful.
So
Don't
I know,
reveal
no
too much.
spoilers.
Okay, okay.
Believe me, I do this
Yeah.
as a living, no spoilers.
Okay, okay.
But
Yes.
like from where she went, because you guys do